Hi, I'm Pato from Kanji. In this video, I would like to explain how to make the casual past or ta form of verbs in Japanese. If you know how to make the te form, this is going to be very easy because the only thing you have to do is to change the te into ta. And of course, de, which is te with tenten, becomes da, which is ta with tenten. Let's see how this will look like. I take the conjugation rules of the te form and I change the te into ta. Well, that's easy to say, but that's a lot of information at the same time. So let's go step by step here. Let's begin with group 1 verbs, the most difficult part. As you know, there are 5 subgroups inside the group 1. The first subgroup is the verbs that end with the syllable u, tsu, or ru. The second subgroup is the verbs that end with the syllable nu, bu, or mu. Then we have 3 more subgroups, the verbs that end with ku, the verbs that end with gu, and finally the verbs that end with su. Now that you know the subgroups, let's have a look at the conjugation. For the verbs that end with utsuru, you take out the ending and put ta instead. Don't forget the small tsu, this is a double consonant. For the verbs that end with nu, bu, mu, you take out the ending and put nda instead. For all the verbs that end with ku, you replace ku with ita. All the verbs? Wait, actually, there is an exception. Do you remember the exception for the te form? It was the verb iku, to go, that doesn't become iite but itte. Well, since the conjugation of ta form is similar to te form, we have the same problem here. Iku doesn't turn into iita but itta with a small tsu, just like the first subgroup. So let's add this little exception here and move on to the 4th subgroup, the verbs that end with gu. The ending gu becomes ida. Finally, for all the verbs that end with su, you replace su with shita. Let's practice all these conjugations. What would this verb become? Kau, to buy. We replace the final u with ta. Don't forget the small tsu. Kau becomes katta. It means the same thing as kaimashita, I bought, but it's more casual. Can you try with asobu, to play? Take out the final bu and put nda instead. Right, asobu becomes asonda, I played. How about kaku, to write? You turn the final ku into ita. Kaku becomes kaita, I wrote. Keep it up. Oyogu, to swim. The final gu is replaced with ida. Oyogu becomes oyoida, I swam. Last example, hanasu, to talk. So how would you say I talked? Replace the final su with shita. Hanasu becomes hanashita, I talked. Very good job. Now that you studied the first group, the other groups will look so easy. Group 2 verbs always end with ru, with a e or e ending syllable before, and anytime we want to conjugate a group 2 verb, the ending ru just disappears. All you have to do is to replace it with ta. So how would you say I went out? The verb to go out is deru. Take out the ru and put ta instead. Exactly. Deru becomes deta. We finished group 2. Group 3 is also easy. The 2 irregular verbs suru, to do, and kuru, to come, have the same conjugation as mass form. Suru becomes shi and kuru becomes ki. Then we just add ta. Let's practice with sôji suru, to clean. You have just finished cleaning, so you can say sôji shita. Okay, group 2 and 3 were easy. But do you remember group 1? Not so sure? Let's summarize everything. Inside the group 1, there are 5 subgroups. The endings utsuru become ta with a small tsu. The endings nu, bu, mu become nda. The ending ku becomes ita, except for the verb iku, to go, which becomes itta with a small tsu. The ending gu becomes ida, and the ending su becomes shita. For group 2, we just replace the final ru with ta. In group 3, suru becomes shi and kuru becomes ki. Then you can add ta. That's it for ta form. Now you can kick back and relax. If you need more help with Japanese, Check out my website, kanjilink.com.